February 14, 2023. Tuesday. Oh, Tuesday, sorry.
Yeah, it
Thank
says
you.
Wednesday, though.
Yeah,
Oh, it does say Wednesday.
yeah, it says Wednesday. It was a mistake, sorry. Okay. Call for order, Tuesday, February 14, 2023 at 5 p.m. Let's join for the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay. Pledge of Allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
roll call. Who's
Who's doing it?
Brian, are you doing the? We are on roll call.
Yeah, roll call.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Aliaga,
Here,
Mr. Dish, or Ms. Dishin,
Here.
Mr. Gittens,
Here.
Mr. or Ms. Harper,
Here.
Ms. Margraf,
Here.
Mr. Milzo is absent, Trustee Morocco,
Here.
and Mr. Neiman.
Here.
And Mr. Yankee is absent.
okay. I need a motion to approve the agenda, right? We're approving the, oh no, we have to approve the minutes first. I need a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Yeah, okay.
Support.
Support, okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried, okay. All right, we don't have any presentations today, so public comment. Anyone from the public, anyone that would like to say something, or we have a public comment, anyone to like to make a comment? Anyone online that would like to make a comment? Any
I'd like
comments
to
from?
make a comment.
Sure.
I just want to thank all of you residents for participating. That was a great call to order. We really needed people to step up, and you guys did, and you did it quickly. So
Yeah,
thank you for that.
absolutely, thank you. We really appreciate that a lot. The participation is very important for us, from our community, so, thank you. David, you like to say something?
No, I was just agreeing.
Okay,
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you guys.
thank you. Okay, moving on, we're gonna review the agenda additions. Any additions or any board member who would like to add something today? No?
I make a motion to accept the agenda as presented.
Okay,
I will second that.
okay, motion have made and by Sam Morocco and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. We don't have nothing yet for financial matters, but very soon we will have probably, most likely. Yes. Okay, we have now reports, resolutions, and recommendations. Number one, the introduction of the CAC members. We can start with, you guys would like to start naming, you can introduce yourself?
Introduce.
Yeah.
My name's Wes Brooks.
Mhm.
I'm been in Clarkston for 7 years roughly. Before that, I was in Oxford since 1958.
Okay.
So basically, I've been in the area
Very nice.
well over 60 years. I'm an associate broker and professional photographer and retired builder.
Very nice. Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you for serving the board.
John Doolin. I've lived at Parks of Stonewood for about 6 years now.
Mhm.
Prior to that, didn't live in the state. So I'm a logistics professional and a management consultant.
Great. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Tanya Carson. I've lived in Clarkston my entire life. I do marketing. I own my own business in Clarkston, and that's pretty much what I do.
Great.
Eric Gasho, I live in the Parks of Stonewood as well, with my wife Julie. We own Clarkston Mortgage.
Great. Thank you.
Julie Gasho, same.
Oh, great.
I'm with
Nice.
Yeah.
Tara Hansen. I grew up in Clarkston and also live in Parks of Stonewood now and work for a family business downtown Clarkston.
Thank you. Thanks, Tara.
Kristen Poplawski. I've lived in Clarkston over 20 years, and I also live in Parks of Stonewood.
Oh, good.
And I'm a sales strategy leader.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you again. Okay. So, Dick, this is the part where you have to do the elections of officers, right?
We do. We do need to elect officers. What we need is a chair, vice chair, and secretary. Let me just say that we take care of the minutes. It's just a matter of the secretary's responsibility just to look over the minutes and sign them. So we take care of it. Yeah.
Does she do roll call, does the secretary do roll call too?
Yes. At the beginning of the meeting, the secretary would take roll call.
Okay.
So you can either nominate these offices individually, or you could nominate a slate and make a motion for a slate and an approval. It's kind of a railroad job, I realize.
For each board, right? For this one and then,
No, we actually don't need, we don't need to have, however, if the CAC feels that they want to have a spokesperson, they're fine. They can
Okay.
do that.
okay.
But, and I'll talk a little bit more about the CAC's role in a
Okay.
moment, okay?
All right, so we have to make a motion for a chairman, for a
Vice chair,
secretary,
yeah,
okay?
and the secretary.
Okay. All right, I will make a motion for chairman, for David Giddens, for chairman of the board.
I'll support that
Okay, you
motion.
support a motion? Okay. All right, and all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, David Giddens is the chairman now.
Great.
All right.
I'll make sure I spell his name right.
Yeah, David Giddens, yes.
EPL.
Now we need a secretary,
Mr.
No, we need a vice chair.
vice chair, right?
Yeah, we also need a treasurer, Brian reminded
Oh,
me.
treasurer, okay.
He's got financial background, anybody?
Anybody in financial background here?
I do it all for the chamber.
It's essentially, you know, we work with the township's budget director to do a budget, so it'd be essentially working with us to the budget. It's not, I mean, it's not gonna be an overwhelming job,
Okay.
so he said.
Sure.
I'll nominate Madeline Deshone for the vice chair position.
Okay,
I'll second.
okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried.
Well, thank you.
Congratulations. Okay, Madeline, vice chair.
And
You're
I'll-
taking notes, right? Brian? Okay.
I'll make a motion to nominate Jennifer Margraf for treasurer.
Okay,
Second.
all right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Congratulations. Now we need a secretary, which is the role that take notes and the minutes and all the information, for meetings, so.
I'm gonna nominate Nate Neiman.
I'll second that.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No, okay. And roll call? You can request roll call.
Authority.
So
We'll
it's-
go with authority,
Okay.
you know?
All right. We're approved, right? Nobody opposed, so. Okay. Congratulations, everybody, okay. Next step is we have to review the DDA development plan. Now, at this point, now we have a chairman that I have to still run the meeting until, no?
No, you can, David can run the meeting.
All right.
I will help you.
I would appreciate it.
Okay. So the next item on here is to begin the review of the DDA development plan.
Yeah, we are in the review of the DDA development plan.
Correct.
In the bottom.
Okay, I agree.
Okay? So let me lead in with a little bit of background, because our CAC members, by the way, you're a distinguished group in the fact that you are our second CAC board in over 35 years. Because the first board was in 1986. And so who was born here in Clarkston? You were? Yeah, you weren't here, you weren't there yet. You were in 1986?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
I was in high school.
Oh, there you go. Well, then, do you remember?
I graduated in '89.
There you go. That's a compliment.
Thank you.
Anyway, by the way, I'm Dick Carlisle. I'm the township's planning consultant. I actually wrote the first plan and the second amendment, the amendment of the plan, and quite ironically, been asked to do the work for this particular effort. For the benefit of the CAC members, we are resurrecting an existing DDA that has been dormant for probably over 20 years. Because of a recognition of the need to make improvements, to be honest, to be able to try to encourage new investment and reinvestment in Dixie Highway and White Lake Road, both which, particularly those in Parks of Stonewood, are very familiar with. And the effects of recessions and COVID have been pretty difficult for a lot of the businesses and for a lot of the activities that we have on our oldest commercial corridor in the township. So thankfully, our township board, both Mr. Aliaga and Mr. Morocco, being supervisor and a board trustee, agreed with the notion of resurrecting this body and proceeded to appoint this board in front of you to be the DDA board, the Downtown Development Board, that would be essentially implementing this plan that you've been sent. Now, legislatively, the CAC's role is generally, the most significant role is during this period when we're adopting this plan, is to provide your advice and input to the DDA board. When we are ready for them to take action, you will also be making a recommendation to them as to whether to recommend adoption of this plan to the township board. So it is a significant role. And who knows better than, that what needs to be done to Dixie Highway than the business folks up here and the people who live in close proximity to it. And that's why it's set up to be this way. When you have 100 residents within your district, you have to have a Citizens Advisory Commission, and that's why we are doing this. I've advised members of the board that this is a good group to keep together periodically, working towards implementing the plan further, because there is a great deal of work that needs to be done, and as many people and talented people you can have involved, the better your chances are of success. So I recommend to you that keep these folks in your speed dial, and when you start to set up subcommittees to implement various components of the plan, these are some of the folks that you should point to participate, because they've agreed to do this, and that's not an obligation, it's just a suggestion, okay? So the DDA plan is a development and tax increment plan, is a legal document. It is what has to be adopted recommended for adoption by this body to our township board. The township board is the ultimate authority in adopting the plan. Because it took us some various steps to get to this point, we ended up with somewhat of a compressed time schedule in which we have to do this. We don't have to do it, but it would really be desirable if we did do it. And that is to have this plan adopted in May, finally, by our township board. The reason behind that is if we do it before then we're going to be able to go back to 2022 as our base year for their capture of tax increment dollars.
Oh.
I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute, okay, about tax increment dollars, because you will probably be asked by some of your neighbors, does this mean our taxes are gonna go up? And the answer to that is no, but I'll explain it to you. I'll explain it further in a moment. So we get this plan adopted, and that means then that this body is then empowered in working in concert with the township board to implement the programs and projects that are identified in this plan to implement improvements to Dixie Highway and White Lake Road and the southern part of M15. This isn't just Dixie Highway, and I fall into that trap sometimes too, but the district is much broader than that. I mean, we're welcome to talk about the entire plan, but a lot of what's in here admittedly is boilerplate language to satisfy the legal requirements of the act under which we are empowered to have a DDA. The most important parts of this are really the programs and projects and the tax increment financing plan portion of it. And so unless there's any broad questions about that from either the CAC or the board, I will go through and sort of summarize the plan, but really sort of dig in a little bit more on the programs and projects. So are there any questions from anybody? Okay, is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So one of the things, and I won't go through them in detail, but one of the things that the law requires you is to sort of lay the basis for the plan. And so that's the first part of this document. It's two parts. It's the development plan and it's the tax increment financing plan. The development plan essentially identifies the setting in which you are going to do your programs and projects, and it identifies specifically what you're going, generally what you're going to do, some general timeframes and cost estimates. That's what the development plan does. It's essentially a document to decide, to say, this is what we're going to do. The tax increment financing plan lays out what the implications are of tax increment financing, the taxing jurisdictions that are subject to capture, and the anticipated amounts that we expect to capture over the next coming years. Both very important. Both components are very important because as time goes on and we start accumulating tax increment dollars, one of the ways that many communities and boards accelerate their implementation is to borrow against tax increment dollars. And that's where the township board comes in. Because to do so, to gain the full faith and credit of the township, you have to have the township board's approval, and it has to be bonded through their borrowing capacity. Fortunately, you live in a community that has a very high rating for bonds. This is exactly what we did with our Corridor Improvement Authority, with many of the road improvements that were done on Sashabaw Road, because we had other sources of financing that if we didn't take advantage of those, we might lose them. So the township board agreed to borrow general obligation, or I don't know if it's general obligation bonds, but the bonds. And the Corridor Improvement Authority is under legal agreement to reimburse the township for the bond payments as time goes on. And as I told the DDA board, I think the last meeting, the good news about our Corridor Improvement Authority board effort is that our tax increment dollars have exceeded our expectations, and consequently, we're going to most likely and probably definitely pay off those bonds early, which is very positive. So anyway, so the whole concept behind tax increment financing, and there's only a few authorities that are authorized by the state to do it. You have downtown development authorities, you have corridor improvement authorities, you have local development finance authorities, and then you have a sort of a specialized authority, which is called a brownfield redevelopment authority, which is authorized to clean up contaminated sites. that are authorized to do tax increment financing. And so how tax increment financing works is when you adopt a plan, you establish a base year. And in this case, it'll be 2022. All of the taxing jurisdictions that are subject to capture continue to collect the taxes from that base year. So let's say they're collecting $100,000 from our district in 2022, they will continue to collect that plus whatever incremental value there is well, that's not true. They'll continue to collect the taxes from the base year. The tax increment is the difference between where your taxable values grow against the base year. So you look at your base year as like this, and if you are creating opportunities for investment in your district, your tax increment values begin to grow like this. And you are able to capture the incremental taxes from Oakland County, from Oakland Community College, from Oakland County Parks, from the here in Clinton Metropolitan Authority, and now from the transportation tax. You're able to capture that incremental value between the increase in taxes and the base year of taxable values. Yes, Sam?
And the township.
And the township. I forgot that township.
Oh, just so we're clear.
Yeah, and the township. We'd like that not to be the case,
I
but
know.
we have to. So that's how tax increment financing works. Now, what happens is that if we just calculate by the rate of inflation, your growth and your incremental capture is relatively modest, okay? But by the way, our assessor, Kim Fagley, is here, who works very closely with our CIA and will be working close with us here in terms of helping do the projections. She actually does all the projections because I trust her more than I trust myself in that particular case. But anyway, however, what happens is as you begin to see reinvestment, you get to, if it's a brand new project, you are able to capture the full value of that less whatever that taxable base year. But for example, if you're doing a major redevelopment project, let's say, for example, the frontage of Parks of Stonewood, which is yet to be developed, that would all be new value to the district, which could be substantial. And that's what's happened out here. With several of the projects, it adds a substantial amount of new value, and you capture the increments from that. So that's how tax increment, yes?
So when you're talking about capturing this value, you're talking about borrowing against this potential.
No, I'm talking about just the revenues that are produced, tax revenues that are produced through tax increment financing. Now, down the road, you may be able to borrow, the township may choose to borrow against those.
Okay.
Okay?
So you're just talking about incremental value you're creating.
Correct, yeah. But we are capturing the taxes from those taxing jurisdictions for use, for investment in the district. So we have to use those dollars that we capture to reinvest back in the district. But the law doesn't let you just do that willy-nilly. What the law says, you got to have a plan for that. You have to identify what you're going to do. And that's how you as a board are able to identify and ultimately measure what your tax increment dollars have been doing to encourage reinvestment in your community in this district. So is that all? Is that clear? Mm-hmm. Okay. So those are the two components of the plan, is that the development plan says what you're going to do in the setting in which you're going to do it. And the tax increment finance plan says these are the amount of dollars we have to work with. Now, what I've advised this board about, and I advise every board that we work with and the township board, is that we're not going to rely solely on tax increment dollars to do everything we're going to do. We use these dollars to leverage other funding. We use it to leverage other, grants, transportation grants, economic development grants. We use it to leverage private donations. We received, private contribution to the projects we did out here. We also used our tax increment dollars to leverage quite a bit of funds from the state and from the county to do these road improvements. So don't ever look at tax increment financing as a sole end financing to what you're going to do. But it'll be these dollars that will be sort of the seed money in the beginning to really get you started. So how many dollars are we talking about? Well, at the very end, we have the spreadsheet, which is the way it's printed. It's pretty small print, but I don't even know if I can read it, to tell you the truth. Yeah, thanks.
If I can clear up something real quick for the CAC members, if your property tax bill was $5,000 in 2022, in 23, if it goes up to $5,700, that $700 is what goes into this DDA district for reinvestment. Does that help?
Yeah,
Well,
thanks.
that-
Yeah, that's good. So what Kim has projected, if we do 100% capture, means we're going to capture 100% of the incremental taxes above the base year, above the base value, over a period of, well, until about 2035, that's going to generate about $5.5 million. Now, let me say, that's a very conservative estimate. Kim, you basically are using a rate of inflation on this.
Rate of inflation, we do have the bowling alley is sold, but they're playing hide and seek with their sale price, but that uncapping. Every time something sells and comes uncapped, that increase in taxable value goes into DDA funds.
What happens with the funds, or the increase if it doesn't go into DDA funds?
It goes to all the tax jurisdictions.
It just goes.
Yeah, they are all the beneficiaries of it. And, you know, if we were starting this brand new, we hadn't had this in place, we would have had to go to all the taxing jurisdictions, and they would have the ability to opt out of this. But because we already had the district in place and never abandoned it, the only thing that expired was the old plan. The district was still in place. Township made sure that they were on firm legal ground, hired special counsel who opined that that is definitely the case. And we've had confirmation, through other means that is the case. So we're very fortunate, and I think that's one of the reasons why the board made this decision, that this is an opportunity that if we don't take advantage of it, we'll probably never have again from that standpoint. So as you can see, if you did have a chance to look at the chart, I mean, in the first year, we're only going to capture about $120,000. But then that begins to grow. That's why you're not going to do major projects unless you're able to leverage some other funds for various programs and projects. And you may be able to. We won't know that until we really get started, that we may be able to leverage some other sources of funding. I know Mr. Aliaga has some thoughts about being more aggressively pursuing grants, and which is a good thing because we'll be able to take advantage of some of the programs that we haven't been taking advantage of in the past. So anyway, you won't, your use of the tax increment dollars is going to be rather conservative and modest in the early going, but eventually it's going to grow. And that's why I always advise, again, don't look at this as the end, just look at this as the beginning. This is the seed money to try to find other sources of funding to implement a number of projects. And we have a lot of transportation issues on Dixie Highway that we hope are going to be the subject of some of these programs and projects. So that's what the picture looks like with the capture. Now, if we could go back to the programs and projects. Does everybody have a copy of that? Because if not, I brought extra copies. Okay. So what I try to do is break these into categorical areas. And while I describe these as well, I describe the nature and the scope of some of these improvements, I try to write this in a way that is going to give the board a degree of flexibility for interpretation about what that really means. So, you know, when you talk about entryway signage, that could be a variety of things beyond just signage. It has to be the setting in which it's located. It could be some landscape improvements. It could be something that is associated with it that's a pedestrian improvement. So I don't completely, this is written in a very, written in a generalized manner to give you some flexibility over time because, and especially the costs. I mean, when we originally started the CIA, we had estimated we were going to replace the bridge, which was going to be a $27 million project. That was in the plan. But we soon realized that we were not going to get the funding. The state was not going to give us the funding. We'll never raised as much money as we needed to do it. So the improvements turned out to be what you see out there today. But it's okay to dream a little bit, and it's okay to have projects that you may not implement or may not be able to for some time. But if you do, they got to be in the plan. Because otherwise, we'll have to go back and amend the plan and go through this process. Now, that's not a big deal, because you already have the district in place. Nobody can opt out at this point. And if down the road you find that you need to make some adjustments, we'll just do this. We'll just go ahead and amend the plan. It's not, you'll have to go through the process, and it's time consuming because it's going to be the same process. It doesn't affect your capture. But you can add projects or amend them if you feel like you need to going down the road. But I think that there's enough way we can write this that there's broad enough interpretation in that. So if I'm just going to sort of summarize what these, is there any questions about this at this point from anybody? Okay. So one of the things we've talked about is trying to create a better image for Dixie Highway. Lack of a better word, I use branding, I don't know if that's what it'll be, but, I think one of the things that the township has been trying to do, is talked about, is sort of some common identification throughout the township. And so that's what I've placed in here, and that's a relatively modest amount of money to be able to do that. We've also had, for many years, the desire to have entry signage into the township. I mean, right now, you don't know when you're entering Independence Township from Waterford unless you're familiar with where the boundaries are. Sam had worked on that many years ago, and,
I even had funding for the
he had
signs at one
funding,
point.
and we weren't successful, unfortunately.
Couldn't get it done.
So, we have major entry points into and out of this corridor, these corridors at Anderson and White Lake, down at the southern end of Dixie Highway, at the northern end of Dixie Highway, and from M15, that, you could start to create an identity that this is the Downtown Development Authority, or whatever you want to call it. You can come up with a theme, but the idea is just to have some signage to say, you're in Independence Township. I've also included, a line in there, and it's going to be completely up to you, is wayfinding, which is essentially a signage system that directs you from within the district to other places within the township. Might be the Township Hall, might be downtown Clarkston, might be Neiman's Market, how about, for that matter. But anyway, I only include that if that is something, I think you should keep it in there. It may not be something over time, but you might find that there are some better directional signage that you can install in the corridor that will make some improvements. We did install a number of streetscape improvements back in the 80s and the 90s, but a lot of it hadn't survived very well over time. We still need some beautification in the corridor, and exactly what that turns out to be will be up to you. It may not be, some uniform trees. It may be pods of land, some landscape treatment. It may be areas where you have some focused seating areas in association with your safety paths. But you'll decide with having a design plan specifically what those are to beautify the corridors. And so I put a budget amount in there for that. I think one of the most exciting opportunities is to improve our safety paths. We have a lot of gaps in the safety path system as it is right now through Dixie Highway. We also have those atrocious paved shoulders that occurred when the state widened Dixie Highway in, I think, the late 80s, 90s, early 90s, sometime like that, they insisted on having those paved shoulders. We've gotten some very positive feedback from MDOT that if we were to put in a full-blown pedestrian pathway system throughout Dixie Highway and connect up the gaps where we currently have them, that they would work with us on the removal of those paved shoulders. So I think there's a great opportunity to, from the standpoint of the community, as the population ages, those safety paths get used heavily. We have an outstanding safety path system throughout the township, essentially everywhere but Dixie Highway. And so that's in the plan, is to be able to improve that. And that's an area where there is great opportunities for other sources of funding. Through MDOT, there are a variety of funds associated with non-motorized improvements. These are the kinds of things that you can start building areas of focus in the highway to create a more livable environment. It might be some little pocket parks. It may be seating areas associated with your safety path system. But again, we put this in here to give you the ability to start to mold a program moving forward. So I've got, I don't know well, we actually got an engineer's estimate on this, so it's $1,607,000. This is probably the biggie to everybody in many respects. We have, traffic safety improvements along Dixie Highway. And there's really three major areas that we have identified in the past as a problem. It's Dixie Highway between Mabee Road and M15, where you have the whole area of a lot of curb cuts there, a lot of traffic. It's congested in that area. The timing of the lights during peak times, peak hours, causes traffic to back up. That's something that we've for a long time have wanted to make some improvements with. As you probably all know, the White Lake and Dixie intersection is under capacity. A lot of traffic backed up there. There needs to be something done with that intersection. So we've placed something in here for that. And then we have, I think, probably one of the more challenging circumstances that between Andersonville and Mabee Road, we have about 2 miles stretch of roadway where there is absolutely no break in the traffic. There's no traffic lights. There's no means to slow traffic down. And that's one of the things that causes big problems at Mabee Road and in that intersection between Mabee and M15. I think we need to start working with MDOT in that regard to make that a much calmer, more livable type of traffic situation down through there. And I don't know what those measures are going to be. I'm not a traffic engineer, but we put that in here so that we can start to explore what those things can be done. We installed a lot of utilities in Dixie Highway with the first DDA, but there were gaps. And there are areas that are not served because water was on one side of the roadway and it hasn't been brought across. This will will not likely be an area where there's a substantial investment from the DDA because there are other sources of funding for this. But I put it in there because it's important for, basic utilities are important for economic development. And having a sound infrastructure is what makes it attractive to people who want to invest, because they know if they don't have to do it, then it means they can invest more in their project. And so we want to get those gaps filled in so that we have, good service of water and sewer throughout the corridor.
Dick, can we invest in private property if we wanted to participate in interconnectivity between sites?
Well, you can, but I will tell you, that might be something that we actually incorporate, yes. First of all, you as a DDA board are able to acquire, buy and sell property, lease property. So in essence, yes, you can. But there is also this concept which we would need to incorporate in this plan, where you can make a site-specific targeted tax increment investment. My advice to you will be, it has to be something pretty doggone special for you to do that. But there are communities now that are using tax increment dollars to incentivize better development.
So for instance, I'm thinking, where the Starbucks is, because that's so dangerous between maybe and M15. They won't, that strip mall owners never cooperated with the inner movements when they did that building. We tried to get them to agree to access the I think it's called the Great Oaks Plaza there, where the Ace Hardware is.
Yeah, behind it.
And, those are types of things that's an accident-causing situation
For sure.
that would warrant us investing on a piece of private
Yeah.
property if we said, we'll pay for it, you just allow us to have inter-site access
Yes,
to
you can.
relieve that problem.
Yeah, the simple answer is yes, you can. You can. And there'll be some legal mechanisms that we will need to follow, but the answer and in fact, that's really something that I've contemplated here too, in terms of traffic, in terms of access management. That was a project that we actually tried to pursue back when both of those properties were developed, and it was just for the reasons you said, that we had previous owners, not these owners, of both properties that ended up not getting along, and so it fell through. I think that it's a really worthwhile idea to think about, because lack of multiple points of access in that area is a big problem. And if you could get from Starbucks into the shopping center without having to come out onto Dixie Highway, because a lot of people are going to go to Starbucks and a lot of people are going to go to Kroger's, and there's no way to get in between them, between the two. So anyway, yeah, we can do that. Yeah.
Can I just get a clarification on that? So are we literally talking that we would purchase, for lack of a better example, Starbucks, and then we retain that property?
No, what I'm saying is we could
Okay.
purchase an easement, for example, to
I
make that
see.
cross connection.
Okay, I thought you literally meant the property, and I'm
No.
like going,
No.
okay.
Well,
No.
what I'm
The
saying
police
is, but
does.
you can, I mean, look, I wouldn't suggest you
Okay,
purchase
got it.
Starbucks.
I don't
We'll make
think
that a
they-
CAC
no,
project.
that's
Exactly
not-
what I was proposing.
No, but there may be circumstances where you have an opportunity to purchase a blighted
Sure,
or
a building,
dilapidated piece of
certainly.
property, and turn it and flip it to somebody that's gonna do something with it that you want them to do. That's pretty common,
Isn't that like a fire hazard too, without having connecting? I know when we develop, we normally have to connect our properties. Why did we not have enough power as a township to do that? Does anyone know?
Well, long story.
I mean, we turned on a lot of stuff here, and so it seems like but I understand.
No, the problem is that the properties didn't develop at the same time.
Right, the shopping center was there.
They were separate, and we tried, but we had no, I think, I'm trying to remember, I think the Kroger's was first, and the Starbucks Little Center there was second. We could not force the owners of the Kroger Shopping Center to allow the Starbucks Center to be able to access. We had no means to be able to do that. But we do have a DDA that can incentivize it.
Do we have the power as a DDA to say we need a fire easement?
I don't,
Like as a safety, so you
yeah,
have access to
I would
the-
say that probably not,
Okay.
not unless we had overwhelming evidence and we really, I mean, then it gets into a real
Right,
legal
then you
matter.
have to
I would
determine
rather
if
see
it's-
us try to incentivize the situation and make it beneficial to both parties, rather than what it is now. So, yeah, that's a good question, though. So, those are the series of projects. If you go to page 20, they're essentially arrayed, and the costs are, you know, and what this estimates is probably close to $13 million worth of projects, with about $2 million of DDA funding devoted towards it. So this doesn't even use all the $5 million that we anticipate collecting, but I anticipate that you're going to be able to attract other funding, and probably in some cases, the cost of these projects will probably increase.
Who would be tasked with trying to, like, do you direct, like, give us a list of people to contact, and then who would be the contact? Who would be the person soliciting the matching funds? Like, I mean, I get it all, but who's the actual people that are educated on the process, and who would actually be doing it for the township?
Well, I mean, the way it worked with the CIA, it was our office and the township engineers.
Okay, so we can hire you as the DDA or consultants to aid us in trying to get matching funds and money, so that's how that
Yeah,
would
or
work.
anybody else for that matter that, you know, is, you know, but
Like a
for
grant
most,
writer?
for most transportation-related grants, you have consultants in place right now that can do that. You know?
Yeah, actually, I want to make a comment about that. So we contacted Lisa McLean office. The staffer came to the township. We have a great meeting with most of the directors. Yesterday, we have also, we went on the phone with somebody from Washington too, and they already sent us some good information about how to apply for grants. So the board, we are working right now in hire somebody to write a grant writer. That's gonna help all the departments and the DDA as well to be able to find grants and apply for the grants.
Mhm.
So hopefully, not this board meeting, but the next one, we're gonna bring the proposal, so the board hopefully is gonna approve this. I don't see why no, the board is not gonna approve it, quite frankly. And we're gonna have a person in the staff that's gonna be working for us, for the township, to be able to write the grants, find grants, and I'm gonna make sure that we're gonna be looking for grants for the DDA. But also, we met with Oakland County as well, the Deputy Supervisor Jennifer Spiegel, she met with Oakland County, and they told us that with the transit millage approved, we're gonna get some money also for the DDA. So we are finding, every week we are working on it, and I'm working in to get as much funding we can get also from Washington. Also gonna be contacting the state of Michigan to see if we can get other funding as well. Yeah, okay?
So are you anticipating that different departments from the township are gonna contribute to the wages of the grant writer, and the DDA would be able to be one of those participants?
So we are working, that's why we are working right now to be able to see how we're gonna pay the grant writer. But we will get it done, but not by tomorrow, because we have a meeting.
Right.
No, I mean, next week, but very soon.
But we would have the ability, if the township allows us to be able to secure some time from that grant writer and fund it through our DDA in some mechanism. Does that seem viable?
Or that or otherwise too. I mean, you know, as I said, it depends on what the
Right.
talents are of whoever that is. I would say that you already have township engineers. You have three firms that work for the township, at least two of them which have extensive transportation experience. So that's another alternative.
In that regard, for transportation money, we're looking to capture from all different,
Correct.
different ventures, but say we're, focused on transportation money.
Yeah.
At all levels of government, you
Right.
would recommend that that would be more suited for one of our engineering companies to go after that money, opposed to a grant writer that would be more all over, all
Well,
different
I wouldn't,
kinds?
again, I wouldn't necessarily say that, and if, depends on, what the background is of the person that you end up retaining to do this work. I mean, they may have excellent contacts to get transportation money. The other thing that you have to do when it comes to transportation money is that all that money is really pretty much funneled through STEMCOG, the Southeast Michigan Council of Governments. And so whoever you have do your grant writing has to know that and has to be able, and has to have that kind of extensive experience to be able, because that's the clearinghouse.
Yes, and we also met with Senco last week.
Yeah.
Senco came to my office, the representative, and we talk about it. Actually, I'm gonna be representing the township and with Senco. And Justina Lamato is gonna be also someone that's gonna be helping us as a liaison as well.
Yeah, and when Mr. Fisher was supervisor previously, we've had that meeting with SEMCOG and kind of start that process, but that's been a little while ago.
Yeah, and just so you know, the reason we're having a grant writer now is so we have it in the house here ready to go, so when the DDA board needed or any other department needed, we have something ready to help us
Yeah.
out. That was the idea. But yeah, I mean,
They should more than pay for themselves.
Yeah,
You know?
for sure, yeah. Yes, of course.
Okay, I think I've probably given as much explanation as I probably should at this point, or can at this point.
Yeah.
So what
Absolutely.
I am suggesting is that, first, any questions, comments, deficiencies? I'd like to hear comments from the board, and then we'll entertain comments from the CAC.
I just had a comment. So I wrote down somewhere, it's, I can't remember which page it's on, but it's, it relates to the funding, where these monies are gonna be allocated. And the first funding is obviously we have to pay for administrative costs. But I didn't see any type of budget or anything like that. It's obviously gonna depend on what we approve, right? And what projects and what engineers we have to hire. But, I was just curious if there's some sort of budget that we have for those upfront administrative costs.
Well, I could. I didn't do that because I didn't, and it might not be a bad idea to do it. We can certainly add that. Part of the, what I've tried to do too is contemplate that the cost of these projects, they're gonna have other soft costs associated with it. Design costs, administrative costs, all of that. But I could probably get with our budget director and plug a figure in here for, actual administrative, for a percentage of administrative costs. And you're gonna have some legal costs too.
Sure.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion. Can easily do that.
Well, and we are already, the township board has funded to get us to this point that we're on the hook to pay them back for when we do start collecting money. It's not much, but in the grand scheme of things, but like, to your point, the township board approved expenditure to hire Dick, the other lawyer that was working on it, get all this going kind of, and then we'll pay that off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had just a couple questions, and Kim, you might be able to answer it. If there's vacant property right now at the 2022 lock-in rate, do we capture everything above the vacant land rate after that? We do. Okay, so
Everything except the taxing authorities that don't participate. So the school millage, we don't
Right.
capture, that sort of thing, but, if you opt for 100% capture and the township board approves that, then everything from all of these, taxing authorities will go into DDA.
Okay, so that's where the new development and redevelopment, mostly new development, is a huge thing. So the development in front of Parks of Stonewood would be a massive
huge.
increase to our budget, you know? Yeah, and then I think that the opportunity to buy property is gonna really give us a lot more flexibility on stuff that we can do. Can you just talk real quick about how we leverage the bonds to do projects sooner with the intent that how we pay for them later, so that it's clear that we're not waiting for it to accumulate to then do something?
Yeah. Well, it's a process. We would hire, the township would hire a financial consultant and a bond counsel that would analyze your current bonding capacity in the township, would evaluate the revenues that are anticipated through tax increment, and make a determination as to how much, well, whether and how much you could borrow against the tax increment revenues. So the bonds would have to be, to be able to get the most favorable interest rate, you want to have the township board, pledge the full faith and credit of the township behind that. And it also has to be evaluated against the township's borrowing capacity. And then agreement is set up between the DDA and the township board to make the principal and interest payments. So that comes right out of your budget. You're not writing the check.
No, but that way
The
we
town
can
just
do
making
bigger
it-
projects faster. We're
Yeah,
not
that's
waiting
for sure.
years. I think that there was talk of it, did we ever put the 10-year cap on it, or did we not? Okay.
There's no cap.
For how long we can capture?
Nope.
And then, there's still an open dialogue of the percentage
Well, that's true.
Of-
We
of capture, right?
Ms. Fegley has made these projections based on 100% capture.
Right. Which I'm in
And,
favor of. But
pardon me?
I'm in favor of
Which,
that much of a capture.
and here's the thing, and I guess what I would advise the board is that you can always amend the plan down the road and scale that back if you decide to. But that will be up to you. I mean, if it's just going gangbusters and you're happy with scaling it back, you can amend the plan and do that. But this still is, in the going years, there's still a pretty modest amount of money considering the size of the district, all the way down White Lake Road, all of Dixie Highway up to Andersonville, or up to Deer Hill, and down in M15. It's a lot of territory to cover, and $5 million in, over 10 years is not gonna cover everything that you're gonna wanna do.
And we have the ability to expand the district,
Well,
right?
only
So-
through amendment, but you have, when you do that, then you give the taxing jurisdictions an opportunity to opt out of just that expansion. You don't jeopardize your existing district. But if let's say you want to expand it all the way to 75. That expansion would be subject to the ability of the taxing jurisdictions to opt out of that expanded district.
And before we made that decision, we would have an idea of how they're treating it with other municipalities to know if that would be.
Yeah.
Because the concern there would be is if we're capturing all of the money over vacant land, and that really develops, it does end up being a lot of money, but it also ends up pulling a lot of resources from the township that would have went to it.
Yeah.
Too, all in a big chunk if we're not subsidizing it with, and could we capture a different percentage in the expanded district if we wanted to than the main district?
Good question that I don't have immediate, that would be a legal question that I can't answer. I don't think I've ever seen that done. I think you have to have a uniform capture, but I don't have, I wouldn't want to answer that question.
Down the road.
We can
Okay.
ask that question to then Kelly. Kelly.
So my question is, what is our bond rating currently?
I think for AAA,
Are we AAA?
Yeah, I think I heard that the other night, AAA, I believe, yeah.
And we are able to shrink the district if we do develop to a point where we have that excess going on. We could shrink the district, and then that would give those districts their money back if we decided to shrink in that
That's
sense.
a really good point, Kim. Thanks for bringing that up. You could actually keep the development district the same. You would need to do that. But you could shrink, and I know why you're saying that. That's what Troy had to do. You can shrink the TIF district. That would reduce your overall capture, but you can still spend the money in the entire district.
So you're talking about like take out the south part of M15 in its entirety, or are you talking about shrinking in the amount of businesses that stack up behind, properties
No,
that
I
stack
think-
up
well, I think
behind
Kim is
Dixie
just giving
Highway?
she's just giving a hypothetical
Oh.
that you always have the ability to shrink the district.
But can it
That's
be
as-
by parcel?
Well, I will tell you, I mean, what some TIF districts have had to do is post-recession, they were upside down, basically, because they had properties whose taxable value went so far down. Well, we did it. We had to do it because this property was on the tax rolls, because we bought it. It was a privately owned building. When we bought this, we took it off the tax rolls, but it was the original taxable value still went against the base. So we did. We amended the district to take this out. The same thing happened with the Recticel property. We took that out. That helped our capture in the Corridor Improvement Authority, and allowed us to collect probably about $50,000 more a year. And that's partly what made the bonding more feasible. So that made a big difference. But that's a really good point.
But you can't put it back in once you take it out.
Right. I don't think so.
Can't flip-flop.
Yeah. Okay, other questions or comments from the board members?
So, besides the wayfinding to the store, which I thought was a great idea of yours, what stood out to me first was the two improvements there. That just opening that up is gonna help traffic flow throughout there, help business, because people don't wanna get in and out of there when it's that busy, so I'm real excited about those two.
Good.
And then, that leads me to the next point, I almost forgot. A large portion of this is coming from the fire and police. And I know that with widening those intersections and making those changes, that will alleviate some of the calls they have to make to those. But how does that really affect their budget moving forward? Because when, we had a fire in July, we do have some theft issues, and they are amazing responses by both those departments.
Well, remember, they're still capturing, they're still getting the same tax revenues from the base. So they're not losing any money. They are not going to benefit from the growth yet, but eventually, they will. So they're not losing any money. And they'll still have the revenue, the revenues from the base. Eventually, will be finished out here, and this CIA will be dissolved. And then, the fire department, the police department, and the township general fund, for that matter, are going to benefit tremendously.
And they'll get a big bump, right?
What does that time frame look like?
Well, it was supposed to be 2029, but as I said earlier, it looks very positive that we're going to be able to pay the bonds off early, so it could be around 2027.
And everyone else in the township's taxes still go into it. It's just
Correct.
these properties that
Yeah.
are stagnant.
And the reality of the matter is the majority, commercial properties don't place the burden on police and fire like our vast residential area. I mean, that's where the most load is from, and that's obviously where the vast majority of the tax revenues come from for police and fire.
All right, the next agenda item is public comment, but I wanted to take a moment to see if the Citizens Council wanted to state anything, any ideas or objections or anything like that? Ideas for amenities or something like that, since we don't have a very long period of time to get this approved, but, you know, we're at our first meeting with you. We want to, you know, hear your thoughts.
Does the DDA have any power over the existing zoning, like to encourage building on Dixie Highway rather than we're sitting with the existing PUD in Parks of Stonewood and office on the corner of Foster and Dixie? Like, do we have any, or do you guys have any power over that to make it so that you can get something developed there, so there's dollars coming in rather than vacant land sitting there?
Yeah, can you want me to answer that?
You can answer it. I believe Brian's from zoning too. I don't know if he wants to comment on that.
Where the board has power over it is to be able to incentivize, you know, the use of that, you know, the use of that property. I don't think the zoning is the problem. You know, if the zoning were the problem, I think you'd find the planning commission and the board wanting to try to change that. As a matter of fact, I mean, on Dixie Highway, we also included, even so we have all these zoning districts, we have the district, the Dixie overlay zone, which is really there to help facilitate development, because we know that some cases, the underlying zoning requirements can be an obstacle. This allows a process whereby we can use those provisions to allow flexibility in terms of how the property is developed. And the best example of that is the property where the gas station used to be on the corner of M15 and Dixie Highway. Had we not had the Dixie overlay district, it would have been very difficult to do that. Got rid of that ugly gas station, and now you have a Crispelli's close by.
Like it would never go from, or there's no reason for the board to support going from like office to, say, multi? Like, wouldn't we want some type of development like that? I know that piece on the corner, I think it's been denied a couple times in the township for multi, and so like if we're encouraging, and it's not us trying to develop it, but like, why wouldn't we want to do something like that?
Yeah, I think that's part of.
This board would have to take it to zoning, is that how that would?
We have a planning commission, and I think, you know, this board has the ability to make recommendations to the planning commission and to the township board.
It's a PUD now, right?
Yeah.
So they have the
Well,
ability.
that's in front of Parks of Stonewood, but on the corner of Foster, is that Foster and Dixie, that dirt road, I believe? It's like
dirt road,
the
yeah.
office zoning for 4 acres. Like, what can you build on office for 4 acres?
Well, the problem is topography on
Yeah,
that property.
right. It would cost you a fortune. You could,
Oh, that piece, yeah.
yeah. Like,
it's-
and
it's
so
been
that
for sale
piece
for
is
about
just gonna
20
sit there
years.
and you now have this in,
Well,
I believe that's in the DD.
You know, probably an even more evident example is the property that Parks of Stonewood wraps around. You know, that, where the office building is and the assisted living center is, there's a lot of property there to develop, yeah. So yes, I mean, I don't think there hasn't been any obstacles put in the place of the property in front of Parks of Stonewood, is because, as a matter of fact, you know, the planning commission, you know, approved the convalescent center there, you know, to replace, you know, a shopping area that wasn't ever gonna happen, so, but that just never has proceeded, so.
Great comment. That's one of the first things I thought of when I joined the board, was can we rezone some of this area, because it's mostly commercial and office, and I think it'd be beneficial, so we'll work on that together. Any other comment?
Can I ask, is the reason for wanting to develop it just to get the increased tax dollars?
I mean, that would be my,
That would be
you know,
my.
I mean, living in
thinking,
Parks
yeah.
of Stonewood, I might disagree, but I just want to make sure I understood.
Okay. It just seems undeveloped, you know, whereas there's has been a housing shortage, so.
That was also my thought, is you look at the property on 75 in Dixie there, that they're renting for $2,500 a month. They can't build these fast enough, and people want to come to the community. Well, I live in Parks of Stonewood too. I'd much rather have multi than have assisted living. I mean, just, you know, like, and so, not that it really matters what I want, but like, the need for homes in the village and the township is so high that, yeah, we could do something like that there and maybe it would get built. And they would sell and rent in no time.
Well, there's actually, I think, even more, much different, I have a different answer to this, and it has nothing to do with tax dollars. It has to do with encouraging reinvestment. And Dixie Highway and parts of White Lake Road desperately need to have improvement. The way you encourage reinvestment is if people are willing to invest. And, invest in either improving existing property or developing vacant property. Even the development of vacant property is going to encourage reinvestment into some of the existing properties because, as you suggest, there might be more rooftops or whatever aspect associated with it that will be able to support businesses in that particular area. So that is the idea behind any type of economic development organization like a DDA, is that your job is to try to encourage reinvestment. But I don't think, I know there are some members of this board in particular that would not want to do that at any cost to the neighbors or to the residents or to the, to the township as a whole.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yeah.
So to that point, and to Tara's point, and we've talked about it, Dick, as to how to put together an incentive, an incentive thing. So we can use DDA dollars to put together a marketing program for Independence Township that would, to solicit investment. And, there's a lot of tools, there's tools that we can use. We can, there's the Brownfield project, there's amortizing fees that we had talked about before when we tried to revitalize Dixie Highway, especially water tap fees and things that are deterrents for people to start new businesses, because that number is so high, but it's really not money we need right now. It's just for, catastrophic failures. So that was something we had discussed before. There's, I think Kim can confer, there's tax incentive programs that we could offer to people, that they could freeze their current taxes for so many years that the board would have to approve and then start paying their taxes to free up more investment money. But there has to be somebody selling this to investment people and letting them know that we're open for business and these are the options that, we're willing to find a way to get you to come here and work with you. And that's a lot of this marketing and branding and stuff that we can spend money on to dial in on those programs and then get the word out, that we're willing to participate. So that's kind of how you get people to do it. The PUD mechanism allows us the flexibility to put anything we want in there if it's a good deal for the township and not a negative impact on residents surrounding. So having that underlying zoning is the flexibility you need. You don't really need to rezone it, because that mechanisms allows you to convert it from a grocery store to a multifamily if the project is viable, to us. So I think it's more, we had worked on this when we tried to revitalize Dixie Highway 10 years ago. We worked with the county, and just talking about amortizing water tap fees and things like that were some things that no one had thought about, and it's big dollars that you can do to capture. So I think that's one of the things that, because of the deterioration of the buildings and the landscape and a lot of the vacant buildings, that, one of our priorities needs to be is equal with new development is to incentivize people to come here and spend money and then let them know what we're doing, that why you would come, that we're refreshing the corridor, we're making investment, that that whole new growth thing spirals new investment. But I never felt that that we advertise enough of what options there are to help, and I think that's something that we can put some effort into.
I think the other point about this is that we also want to make sure we want our businesses that were already here to be successful. Because if we lose those businesses, getting new businesses is just that much harder. So that's, so that's another really key objective of a DDA, is to ensure that your current businesses are gonna be thriving. So,
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Tara. Thank you, Sam. Anybody else on the CAC that wants to?
For the safety path improvements, is that lights, crosswalks, all of those things too?
yeah. And barrier-free accessibility at the intersections, which would be required anyway, but we need to upgrade those.
Those have to all be made ADA accessible then, when we go to do that?
Yeah, yeah. Which is also a benefit to people that are
Right.
pushing strollers.
Yeah.
Or shopping carts, for that matter. But yeah, we would have to, any project that we do would have to, regarding non-motorized accessibility, would have to be ADA accessible, yeah.
Okay, great.
Can I ask about just the years that you have here?
Yeah.
What was the kind of reasons used for the priorities of what you thought they might start?
To be
or whatever?
totally honest, it was my best shot at it. But the reason is, I tried to identify, now, I had some sense on the water and sewer extension projects, timing-wise, from the Township DPW director. But I tried to array these so that some of the more expensive things were later on, by the time we
Yeah.
accumulate more dollars. There's no, I will tell you and tell this board, there's no magic to this, because this timeframe can be altered at any time without amending the plan. And frankly, for example, if you get a large funding to do the safety paths, you're gonna do it when you get the funding. So this is just an attempt to try to cut my best guess at when these projects can occur.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome, but it's a good question.
So the next part of the agenda would be public comment. Does anybody have public comment? Anybody from online? Do they usually just chat in there?
Usually.
They say something if
Yeah,
they're out
usually.
there.
Yeah, usually, but
All right. Authority comments?
authority
I have
comments,
a comment.
Yeah.
Dick, what's the next, what are we doing next? What do we gotta work on, you know?
We're going to have, you have a meeting scheduled, our next meeting is in March, and that's when I'm hoping that you're going to make a recommendation to adopt the plan. March 8th, and that's also a joint meeting.
March 8th.
And that, and I don't, it seems like we're rushing things. And if anybody feels, that we're doing so in a manner that's, a problem, we've got to know that. But this schedule is set up to be able to capture 2022 base year taxes. So so March 8th, I would ask the board and the CEAC to make their recommendation to the township board to recommend approval of the plan to the township board. The clerk has to notice a public hearing after that, and there has to be 2 notices and some other stuff that we have to do all this notification. So if we do all this, the township board will be able to have their public hearing and approval of the first reading of the ordinance adopting the plan on April 4th. That gets us to May 9th, where they do the second reading and they adopt the plan in the second reading, and you've hit the deadline.
April 4th, you're talking about the order board,
The township
the
board.
township board, okay.
But if we get delayed, we will have to push these things back, and we'd have to have special meetings and whatever, and it's gonna be tight. We have to have, I think it's March 19th, May 19th. I think that's the last, yeah, something like that. So, you know, the reason behind this is we have to approve this before our tax rolls go to the state for their certification. And that's what all these deadlines are bumping up against.
Okay. Okay. I have a question, Stu.
Yes.
Are we under the confines of the Open Meetings Act, this board?
Yes.
So if we want to have subcommittees,
If you have 3 members, that's not, I mean.
okay,
yeah,
does
that's
that
not a
include
problem.
their group too?
Yeah, because they're not on the DDA board.
So we could have
So you
3
could have-
members of our board and as many of them.
Sure.
In an unadvertised
Yeah.
meeting, just not 4 of us.
You're not making any decisions.
Right, no, just because there's gonna be a lot of,
Right.
if we wanted to break up in groups to look at different facets, you know, I just wanna make sure that we're not, you know, violating the Open
No,
Meetings Act. So I
no,
wasn't sure.
the DDA board members are the only voting members. And so as long as you don't have, there's only 3 of you or a quorum, then you're fine.
What is the quorum?
No, we have
Well-
9, right?
Pardon me?
We got 9 people.
Yeah,
But
you
many
actually
people.
you could actually have 4.
4, yeah.
Okay, well, that's
Can be 4.
4 of us and as many as them as.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My math isn't so good.
No, it's a very good question.
Yeah.
So
Well, I
that way
just
we
wanna
can
make
be
sure, 'cause
working on
I
it,
can't
yeah.
believe we're gonna be able to get every project figured out in this forum. We're gonna have to do some
Well, I
research
mean, I think
and
especially
stuff.
when you start talking about sort of thematic things like branding,
Right.
image, you know, stuff like that, you know, you're gonna have to do that with subcommittees.
That's what we did last time when we did
Correct.
it. We had people working on speed limits. We had people working on sign ordinances to see if there was something we could do to help businesses out. We had, and I have all those notes. We had 27 business owners that volunteered. We met every, few weeks
That's
for
awesome.
4 or 5 months, and we came to the board with this whole shopping list of suggestions. They weren't receptive to it at all, but we did. At that time, other things were, going on, and, but we've done the exercise, and that did work out well, because you could just focus, everybody took a thing and
Yeah.
really put their time into it, you know?
You have you are able to conduct your business as long as you comply with the law. You're able to conduct your business in any way that you feel is needed to implement the plan.
Okay.
So you can have subcommittees, you can do this in a variety of different ways. A lot of this stuff, there's gonna have to be some planning associated with it up front once you decide what you want to do. So that's another reason why the timeframes, government works slowly. That's why the timeframes are to some extent what they are.
What's the mechanism to get proposals?
For
Bidding, for bids, to get bids, if we decide we want to get bids on flags on the light post,
I
or
see.
light posts, or, what's the process for this board to put out a scope of work and a bid request? What's the?
You know,
On the procurement policy.
yeah, this is why Brian is your support person from the township. And
Okay.
that we do, that would all be done through, the administrative support is gonna have to come via the existing township government. You're not gonna hire a DD, I don't recommend you hire a DDA director, you don't have the money to do that. So everything that is gonna be done is gonna have to be done by these board members, by volunteers, and by township staff and your consultants.
Okay.
So, yeah, but you do have to follow the normal procurement policies of the township to do that.
Does that mean it has to be a township-approved contractor?
Not necessarily.
No, it just has to be approved?
Yeah, no, no,
It's just, you follow the normal bid process, and then you either collect bids, or you go with a state-approved or county-approved
yeah.
qualified bidder.
We have the authority to pick that, or do we have to send it to the township board?
That's a good question. I think we've generally followed a policy of a recommendation from this body to the township board. But let's say, for example, you want to hire a branding consultant. There's no township consultant that does that. So that's not going to be an issue. There will be there will be, you'll want to specifically have an RFP or an RFQ to hire a specific type of consultant for that. I do recommend that it be coordinated through the township, because I think the township is looking at similar things from that standpoint. So you,
What's the limit, like, what's the power of, at which point of our expenditures do we need to have the consent of the township board?
well,
It could be
You're gonna have-
invoices to you, let's say.
Yeah,
It could
you-
be whatever, you know.
we will have to prepare an annual budget to the township board. That's your that is your authorization, unless you go above and beyond an extraordinary expenditure. And I'm sure there's probably limits to how much you can spend without approval of the township board. But basically, we do a budget for the CIA, and you'll have to do a budget for the DDA, an annual budget that will identify. And that will be coming up,
I was just gonna ask, what's the date on that?
that'll be
May
coming up.
10th. No, I'm just kidding.
No,
Budgets are already approved for this year.
yeah, I don't know if, we don't even have enough.
Summertime.
Yeah, probably summertime. But we'll have to have a budget approved by then, or ready by then, that will determine how you are making your expenditures going forward. Right now, we're working off of borrowed money from the township board.
I was more in line with if we come up with what we want to spend the money on,
Yeah.
and we get bids and we agree it's what it should be spent on, are we at risk that it goes to the board and they have a different idea of what than what we're talking, and then we start, is that possible? Or do we have the authority to move forward with our plan with their, oversight?
You're asking me a lot of questions that I can't.
I'd like to know what our power is from the beginning. I want to know.
Probably I would have Dan Kelly here, which, by the way, he was going to be here,
Right.
but you know why Dan is not here, because he's on the Board of Trustees at Michigan State, and that's where he is right now. No, we'll work out, we'll work out this. It's never been an issue. This is one of the reasons why the township supervisor is a member of the board. So that township supervisor can carry these things to the township board, which is just exactly what Mr. Kittle did with the CIA board, represented. And especially, it's, you're oftentimes going to be asking the township board to participate in the cost of things. So it's a pretty good idea that everybody's on board with the same thing.
Yeah, unfortunately, Dan Kelly couldn't come, as you know, because what happened last night, but we're taking notes. I'm sure I'm gonna talk to Dan Kelly tomorrow. I will follow up with you guys. It's a good question. So, why you don't send me an email? I'll take care of it.
Yeah, I just
All right.
want
Any more
to get
questions?
as
Any
much
more
clarity as
questions
we
I can't
can.
answer, Sam?
Huh?
You got any more questions I can't answer?
I had a few tonight. Well, typically, there wouldn't probably be two board members on this board.
No.
I just happen to have an interest in property on Dixie, so they felt it was okay for me to participate, so.
But you can. I mean, even if you didn't, you could be an at-large member, too.
I could have been,
Yeah.
but, so that does it does help a little bit that we've got two board members on here to convey our thoughts and wishes to the township board.
So is everybody feeling comfortable so far with this? Are we going in the right direction?
Mhm.
Okay.
Great group, I like it.
Because, hopefully, at your next meeting, you'll be prepared to make a recommendation of approval. That's the most important thing right now, Sam, is to keep our eye on that ball.
I got, yeah.
Okay, we'll get to the rest of these things once you are really operating, and you will be. I mean, you'll be operating sooner than you think. We actually start capturing money from the winter tax bill, don't we?
You won't capture until 22 is your base, so the 23 assessments are levied July 1st and December 1st.
Yeah, we'll start capturing, when the winter tax bill goes out,
Right,
most of that is paid after the first of the year, though.
right.
But some people
That
can't.
goes into the 24 fiscal year budget.
Yeah, okay.
Awesome. So, the last part of the agenda is to adjourn.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Everybody agrees?
Yeah.
Aye.
Aye.
Great. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, CAC members.
Congratulations.
Brian,
Looks like
can you
I
come
got
over here for a minute?
Twice in 1 week? Wow, I'm getting that was
Like I was trying to shake up this
Roll right over there.
Recycling.
Brian said you can leave it here.
Are they doing off the video?